Do you think pastors' daughters are expected to be too perfect? Are they held to unrealistic standards just because of their parents' position? Or is the pressure justified? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Rachel was the perfect daughter at home. Soft-spoken, obedient, and respectful. As the only child of a well-respected pastor and his devoted wife, she carried herself with grace in the presence of her parents and the church community. She attended every church service, led worship on Sundays, and was often used as an example of a godly young woman. Tunde had always admired Rachel, even as children. She was the perfect girl in his eyes, gentle, respectful, and deeply rooted in her faith. Growing up in the same church, he had watched her sing in the choir, always modest and obedient, the kind of girl any man would be proud to call his own. After secondary school, he could no longer hold back his feelings. He approached her, his heart pounding, as he asked if she would be his girlfriend. To his delight, she agreed. Their love was young, pure, and full of dreams. They would sit under the mango tree in her compound, talking about their future, how they would build a strong Christian home together. Tunde was convinced that Rachel was the one God had chosen for him. When they both gained admission into the same university, Tunde was excited. He believed nothing would change between them, but he was wrong. At first, Rachel was still the sweet church girl he had always known, but as the months passed, she began to change. She started wearing clothes that shocked him, missing church services and making new friends who didn't share their values. The soft-spoken girl he once knew became someone else. Someone distant, carefree, and rebellious. Tunde tried to talk to her, to remind her of who she was, but she only laughed, telling him to stop being so uptight. She wanted to enjoy life, she said. The more he tried to hold on to her, the more she pulled away. Heartbroken, Tunde watched as the girl he once loved disappeared before his eyes, replaced by someone he could no longer recognize. Rachel became a different person entirely. At school, she was the life of the party. She wore bold outfits, stayed out late, and was known for her wild lifestyle. Most of her friends didn't even believe she was a pastor's daughter. To them, she was just Rachel, the beautiful, carefree girl who could get any man she wanted. Tunde, however, had known both sides of Rachel. They had grown up together in the same church, and he had admired her for years. He had always seen her as the perfect woman, beautiful, intelligent, and godly. So when they both got into the same university, he thought it was fate bringing them together. But Tunde soon realized Rachel was not the girl he thought she was. One evening, as he walked past a popular lounge near campus, he spotted her. She was dressed in a tight mini dress, laughing loudly with a group of rich boys. One of them had his arm draped around her shoulder, whispering in her ear. Tunde's heart sank. This wasn't the Rachel he knew. He debated whether to approach her, but before he could decide, Rachel turned and saw him. For a moment, her eyes widened in shock, but she quickly masked it with a smirk. She whispered something to the guy beside her and strutted toward Tunde. "Tunde," she greeted, crossing her arms. "What are you doing here?" "I should be asking you that," he responded, his voice laced with disappointment. Rachel scoffed. "Oh, come on, don't act like my father." Tunde sighed. "Rachel, this isn't you." Rachel chuckled. "This is the real me, Tunde. The one who isn't living under her father's shadow." She turned away and walked back to her friends, leaving Tunde standing there, confused and heartbroken. It was at that moment he realized something. Rachel wasn't lost. She had chosen this life, and no one could change her unless she wanted to change herself. Rachel's double life continued for months, and Tunde tried his best to ignore it. But the more he saw her slipping away, the harder it was to pretend he didn't care. One Sunday afternoon, after church, he approached her. "Rachel, can we talk?" Rachel sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "Tunde, I already told you." "I'm not here to judge you," he interrupted. "I just want to understand." Rachel stared at him for a moment before nodding. "Fine. 5 minutes." They walked to a quiet corner outside the church, and Tunde wasted no time. "How are you living like this?" he asked. "You used to love church, love God." Rachel chuckled bitterly. "Love? Or was I just doing what I was told?" Tunde frowned. Rachel, don't say that. She crossed her arms. You think you know me, Tunde? You don't. I've spent my whole life being the pastor's daughter, the perfect little girl. But the moment I stepped into university, I realized I could be whoever I wanted. And guess what? I like this version of me. Tunde sighed. And what about the people who care about you? Your parents? Rachel's expression hardened. My father loves his congregation more than he loves me. My mother is too busy being the perfect pastor's wife. They don't see me, Tunde. They see who they want me to be. Tunde was silent. He had never thought about it that way. Rachel smirked. You're wasting your time, Tunde. I'm not changing. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, helpless. But something told him this wouldn't be the last time he would try to save her, and it wouldn't be the last time she would break his heart. Tunde tried to move on, but Rachel was always on his mind. He watched helplessly as she drifted further into her reckless lifestyle. Despite everything, he couldn't let go of the girl he had known since childhood. Michio sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at her phone. Chichioki had ended things, leaving her stranded. She had no place to go. As she scrolled through her contacts, her finger hovered over Tunde's number. She knew he still loved her. He would take her back. Rachel called him. Tunde, can we meet? Her voice was soft, different from the usual confident tone she used with him. He hesitated before replying. Where? There's a cafe near campus. Please. Curious, and perhaps still hopeful, he agreed. When he arrived, he found her seated in a corner, wearing a simple dress. She looked nothing like the flashy girl he usually saw on campus. For the first time in a long while, she resembled the Rachel he once knew. I wanted to apologize, she said when he sat down, for everything. I've been unfair to you. Tunde watched her closely. What changed? Rachel exhaled. I realized I've made a lot of mistakes. She reached for his hand, her eyes pleading. I want to change, Tunde. I just need someone to help me. Tony felt a mix of emotions, relief, excitement, but also doubt. Are you sure, Rachel? This isn't something you do just to make me happy. She nodded firmly. I want to be better. Tunde sighed. He had always wanted this moment, but now that it was happening, he wasn't sure if he could trust it. Still, his heart wouldn't let him say no. Okay, he said. Let's start over. Rachel smiled, and for the first time in a long time, Tunde felt hopeful. But he had no idea that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test his patience like never before. At first, things seemed to be going well. Rachel and Tunde started dating again, and he made it his mission to help her rebuild her life. Tunde looked at Raquel with pleading eyes. You need to rebuild your life. With God, with purpose, he said gently. Rachel scoffed, rolling her eyes. Please, Tunde. I just need comfort, not a sermon. He sighed, disappointed. Tunde was taken aback. He had expected some resistance, but not outright dismissal. Still, he didn't push. He believed she would come around. But, as the days passed, it became clear that Rachel was not interested in changing. She would use his bank card to buy expensive things without asking, treating his money as if it were hers. One evening he came home to find Rachel carrying bags of designer clothes. Rachel, what is all this? He asked, frustrated. She smiled. Just a little shopping. Tunde ran a hand over his face. Did you really need all this? Rachel rolled her eyes. Tunde, relax. It's just money. It's my money, he corrected. Rachel scoffed. Oh, please, don't act like you're struggling. What's a little spending? Tunde clenched his jaw. He wanted to argue, but he knew it would only lead to a fight, so he let it go. Rachel's behavior only got worse. She hated the heat and would constantly complain about it. One afternoon, Tunde walked into the house to find the air conditioner running on full blast. Rachel, why is the AC on all day? He asked. Rachel, lounging on the couch, shrugged. It's hot. Tunde frowned. Electricity isn't free. Rachel rolled her eyes. Tunde, you're acting poor. Chijioke never complained about these things. At the mention of her ex's name, Tunde stiffened. "Rachel, I am not Chijioke," he said through clenched teeth. She smirked. "I know. He never made me feel bad about my lifestyle." Tunde exhaled, trying to keep his temper in check. Rachel didn't stop there. She stopped cooking altogether, choosing instead to order food every day. One evening, Tunde came home to find another set of takeout boxes on the table. "Rachel, can't you at least cook once in a while?" he asked, exhausted. She raised a brow. "Why should I? We can afford to buy food." Tunde shook his head. "That's not the point. You're not even trying." Rachel waved him off. "Tunde, if you have a problem with it, cook for yourself." Tunde stared at her, realizing something. Rachel had no intention of changing. But he loved her, and that love made him tolerate things he never thought he would. Rachel's love for the nightlife returned with full force. At first, she pretended to be content with staying home with Tunde, but soon she started making excuses to go out. "Tunde, my friends are having a small get-together. I won't stay long," she said one evening, already dressed in a tight-fitting gown that clung to her curves. Tunde frowned. "Rachel, it's late. Why do you always want to be outside?" Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Tunde, I'm not a child. What's wrong with having fun?" Tunde sighed. "I'm not saying you shouldn't have fun, but you're always out these days. We hardly even spend time together." Rachel placed her hands on her hips. "So now I need your permission before I go out?" "That's not what I'm saying, and you know it." Rachel scoffed and grabbed her purse. "Tunde, I don't have time for your unnecessary lectures. I'll see you later." With that, she walked out, leaving him frustrated. Her outings became more frequent. Tunde would wake up in the middle of the night to find her sneaking in, smelling of alcohol and expensive perfume. One night, as she tiptoed into the house, he switched on the lights. "Rachel, where are you coming from?" Rachel jumped, clutching her chest. "Jesus, Tunde, you scared me." Tunde remained seated, arms folded. "I asked you a question." Rachel sighed dramatically. "Tunde, why are you acting like my father? I went out, I had fun. End of story." Tunde shook his head. "Rachel, this isn't you." Rachel smirked. "Oh, and who am I, Tunde, the naive church girl you fell in love with? I told you, I'm used to this life now." Tunde exhaled sharply. "You're ruining us, Rachel." Rachel gave a bitter chuckle. "No, Tunde, you're ruining us with your constant nagging." She turned and walked into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Tunde sat there for a long time, wondering how the girl he once loved had turned into someone he barely recognized. But he still couldn't let go. Not yet. Rachel's reckless lifestyle took a new turn when she met a new man. During one of Rachel's outings, she met Tony, a wealthy internet fraudster who quickly swept her off her feet. He showered her with expensive gifts, took her to luxurious restaurants, and spoiled her with endless shopping sprees. Rachel, blinded by the lavish lifestyle, fell deeper into his world. Tunde noticed the sudden change, but pretended not to see. He convinced himself that Rachel was still his, that she wouldn't betray him. Until one night, Rachel had been out late again. This time, she came home with a new handbag and an expensive gold bracelet. Tunde glanced at the items and folded his arms. "Where did you get these?" Rachel didn't hesitate. "A friend gave them to me." Tunde narrowed his eyes. "Which friend?" Rachel sighed. "Tunde, must you question everything? I have friends, okay? Friends who care about me." Tunde clenched his jaw. "And is one of those friends a man?" Rachel smirked. "Does it matter?" Tunde's heart sank. "Rachel, are you cheating on me?" Rachel scoffed. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Giving out my number to a few guys and accepting gifts doesn't mean I'm cheating." "Rachel, I have tolerated so much, but this is too much. Why are you doing this to me?" Rachel sighed dramatically. "Tunde, you worry too much. Maybe if you stopped being so uptight, you'd enjoy life a little." Tunde shook his head. "Rachel, you're playing with fire." But Rachel didn't listen. Rachel was lying in bed at an expensive hotel, wrapped in silk sheets. She sighed contentedly, feeling like she had everything she wanted. Money, luxury, attention. She turned her head slightly and saw Tony moving around in the dark, holding something in his hands. Her heart skipped a beat. "Tony?" Tony froze. "What are you doing?" Tony hesitated, then quickly tried to place something on her head. Rachel's instincts screamed. She shoved him away and sat up, her eyes darting to the object in his hand. It was a small, red calabash, covered in strange markings. Her blood ran cold. "What the hell is that?" she screamed. Tony lunged for her, but she was faster. She grabbed the bedsheet, wrapped it around herself, and bolted for the door. She ran barefoot down the hallway, ignoring the curious stares of hotel staff and guests. She had almost been used for rituals. Shaking with fear, she did the only thing she could think of. She ran to Tunde. Rachel pounded on Tunde's door, tears streaming down her face. "Tunde, please open up." After a few moments, the door swung open, revealing a sleepy and confused Tunde. Without thinking, Rachel threw herself into his arms. "Tunde, please help me." Tunde held her at arm's length, noticing her disheveled state. Tunde sighed and led her inside, giving her water to drink. Just as Rachel was about to explain further, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw multiple notifications. Curious, he opened one. It was a video of Rachel running out of the hotel, screaming. Tunde's heart dropped. Rachel noticed his expression and panicked. "What is it?" He turned the phone toward her. "This." Rachel's eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God!" The video had gone viral. Everyone knew, and so did Tunde. Something in his expression changed. The last bit of hope he had for their relationship vanished. Rachel grabbed his hands. "Tunde, please. I can explain." But Tunde pulled away. "No, Rachel." His voice was cold. "I'm done." Rachel shook her head. "Tunde, don't say that. Please. I love you." Tunde's eyes hardened. "You don't love me, Rachel. You never did." Rachel broke down, sobbing. "Please, Tunde, give me another chance." But Tunde had already made up his mind. "Goodbye, Rachel." And with that, he walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her choices. Tunde moved on. He focused on his career, and eventually he met someone new. A kind-hearted woman named Anita, a medical doctor who saw the best in him. Their relationship was peaceful, built on mutual respect and love. Unlike Rachel, Anita appreciated the small things: home-cooked meals, thoughtful gestures, and simple moments. A year later, Tunde and Anita got married. As he stood at the altar, watching his beautiful bride walk toward him, he knew he had made the right choice. Somewhere, Rachel watched from afar, regret written all over her face. She had lost the one person who truly loved her, and she had no one to blame but herself. Rachel sat in her small, cluttered apartment, scrolling through her phone with a heavy heart. Her once glamorous life had crumbled, and all she had left was regret. Every day she checked Tunde's social media, watching as he lived the life she could have had. Tunde and Anita's wedding pictures flooded her timeline. Tunde smiling with genuine happiness, Anita glowing in her white dress. They looked perfect together, and it tore Rachel apart. She threw her phone aside and buried her face in her hands. "I should have been the one in that dress," she muttered. Days turned into weeks, and she became obsessed, stalking them online, reading every post, watching every video. She imagined scenarios where Tunde would realize he still loved her and leave Anita. But reality was different. Tunde had moved on, and deep down, she knew she needed to do the same. One evening, as she sat staring at her reflection in the mirror, she whispered, "Enough." She wiped her tears and picked up her phone, deleting Tunde's pictures, blocking his accounts, and removing herself from the past. For the first time in a long while, she looked at herself and saw someone who needed to heal, not dwell on mistakes. It was time to restart her life. Rachel picked herself up and decided to turn her life around. She focused on her studies, distancing herself from distractions. With determination, she graduated with good grades, proving that change was possible. Though she had regrets, she learned that true success came from hard work, not shortcuts. She realized that self-worth was not in material things, but in integrity and purpose. Tunde, though hurt, was proud of her growth. Regid understood that mistakes didn't define her. What mattered was learning from them. In the end, she embraced a new beginning, knowing that redemption was always possible with the right choices.